GB News with me, Matt Goodwin. On tonight's show, let's get stuck in. Attacks on a rising Reform Party continue in Westminster, as today it's emerged that Attorney General Lord Hermer astonishingly compared those campaigning to leave the European Convention on Human Rights to, you guessed it, the Nazis. I'm going to be joined by former Attorney General Dominic Grieve, who thinks Hermer did not need to apologise for his comments. And after the Prime Minister took the fight to Nigel Farage yesterday, the Chancellor is set to tear up Treasury spending rules to invest in key red wall seats ahead of the next election. But is this all too late for the Labour Party? And I'll also be joined by Reform UK councillor Jamie McIver, as an audit has revealed that Whitehall has been spending a staggering £27 million on so-called woke jobs or diversity jobs in a single year. And new data today has revealed that half of all Class A drug users in Britain are being let off by police without punishment. Is Britain simply decriminalising drugs through the back door? We'll be debating that tonight with our panel. And that State of the Nation tonight on GB News starts right now. And I'll also be joined tonight by my top panel, former Labour MP Lloyd Russell-Moyle and political commentator Esther Krakue. As ever, let me know your views at gbnews.com/your say, and of course reach us on X at GB News. But now it's time for the News Bulletin with Tatiana Sanchez.
Matt, thank you very much. The top stories. President Trump says Elon Musk will always be with us despite him leaving the administration. Elon Musk made that announcement in an online post yesterday. And while his role was always temporary, the ex-owner's departure from Doge comes just a day after he criticised Trump's budget bill. And this also comes as President Trump's global tariffs have been temporarily reinstated after a court agreed to pause a ruling blocking the sweeping trade levies while it considers the White House's appeal. Well, Musk this evening reflected on his time at Doge, doubling down on his previous claim that the department could help the administration save $1 trillion.
Today it's about a man named Elon, and he's one of the greatest business leaders and innovators the world has ever produced. He stepped forward to put his very great talents into the service of our nation, and we appreciate it.
So I look forward to continuing to be a friend and advisor to the president, continuing to support the Doge team, and we are relentlessly pursuing $1 trillion in waste and fraud reductions, which will benefit the American taxpayer. That's it, really. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you.
All right.
In other news, Paul Doyle has appeared in court accused of driving his car into a crowd of people after Liverpool FC's trophy parade. The 53-year-old faces 7 charges, including wounding with intent, causing grievous bodily harm with intent and dangerous driving. The charges relate to 6 victims, including 2 children aged 11 and 17, after a total of 79 people were injured in the city centre on Monday evening. Mr Doyle spoke only to confirm his name and date of birth during today's hearing before he was remanded in custody ahead of a plea hearing on the 14th of August. Judge Menery set a provisional trial date for the 24th of November. Comedian and actor Russell Brand has pleaded not guilty at Southwark Crown Court today to charges of rape and sexual assault. The 49-year-old is charged with 1 count of rape, 1 count of indecent assault, 1 count of oral rape and 2 counts of sexual assaults in connection with incidents involving 4 separate women between 1999 and 2005. Mr Brand pleaded not guilty to all counts. The actor was charged following an investigation by Channel 4 and the Sunday Times in which several women made allegations against him, which he denied at the time. Russell Brand has previously said he's never engaged in non-consensual activity. And the government has sold its remaining shares in NatWest and confirmed a £10.5 billion loss to taxpayers since the bank was rescued during the 2008 financial crisis. It means NatWest, which was previously called RBS, has returned to private ownership for the first time since it was bailed out. The Treasury has been a stakeholder since the bank received almost £46 billion of funding in 2008 and 2009. Rachel Reeves says bosses at NatWest said it's a significant moment and thanked taxpayers for rescuing it 17 years ago. And those are the latest headlines for now. It's over to Matt.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Welcome back to State of the Nation tonight on GB News with me, Matt Goodwin. Now, yesterday, a visibly shaken and anxious Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer rushed to Northern England to give a speech that was wholly dedicated to attacking Nigel Farage and the Reform Party, a party which currently has only 5 MPs. In the astonishing speech, Prime Minister Keir Starmer mentioned Nigel Farage by name no less than 16 times. He said that Farage would crash the economy. He said Farage supports fantasy economics. He said Farage is no different from Liz Truss. And he said that the British people could simply never trust Nigel Farage. Check this out.
And that's the question you have to ask about Nigel Farage. Can you trust him? Can you trust him with your future? Can you trust him with your jobs? Can you trust him with your mortgages, your pensions, your bills?
The Reform UK leader said in the last 24 hours he had been attacked by Starmer, Badenoch, Swinney, Sarwar and just about everybody else except the voters. He said it shows that Reform are winning. New polling does suggest that the British people are increasingly willing to trust him, including those in traditional Labour Party heartlands. GB News exclusively revealed earlier this week that Nigel Farage is preferred as the next Prime Minister by 27% of adults in red wall seats that are controlled by the Labour Party in Northern England, with Keir Starmer lagging 5 points behind. Now, this data explains Labour's flurry of attacks on the Reform Party. The insults are intensifying because they are scared and panicking, and they aren't just coming from the Prime Minister. At the same time as Keir Starmer's remarkable speech, his close friend, Attorney General Richard Hermer KC, compared people who want to leave the European Convention on Human Rights, the ECHR, such as Nigel Farage and Reform, to the Nazis. Yes, that's right, people who want to reshape the legal architecture that has left us unable to control our own borders and deport foreign criminals out of this country are now equivalent, in the eyes of Labour politicians, to Adolf Hitler. People who identify that the ECHR has not intervened, as thousands have been arrested for speech crimes here in Britain every year, have been likened to the German extremist Nazi Party. The USA, of course, have the First Amendment and are much freer than us in the UK. They don't need such an organisation staffed by unelected judges and lawyers that intervenes to the detriment of their country. But comparisons to Nazism is a level of debate to which Labour politicians have plummeted. Remember, it wasn't that long ago David Lammy was saying the same about the ERG group after the vote for Brexit. Now, Nigel Farage has lost no time in hitting back, telling the Telegraph that it was disgraceful, in his words, for Lord Hermer to compare the growing campaign to withdraw from this outdated organisation to 1930s Germany. And tonight, Number 10 has told GB News that the Prime Minister has complete confidence in his Attorney General. Sir Keir Starmer and his fellow human rights lawyer colleague Lord Hermer are out of touch with the British public, and a smear such as this will only strengthen Reform's case. You know what this is, don't you? It's the start of Project Fear 2.0, an outburst of hysteria, panic, sensational claims and untruths among an elite class that can now sense its political project and power are being openly rejected by voters. In episode 1 of Project Fear before the vote for Brexit in 2016, the elite class on both the left and the right in this country joined forces to warn and gaslight voters that if they dared to challenge the broken status quo, there would be a year-long recession, there would be World War III, there would be endless chaos and no trade deal with America, before the likes of Labour MP David Lammy went on to make that comparison with 1930s Germany. Well, as ever, I want to hear your views about all of this. Project Fear 2.0 at gbnews.com/yoursay, and of course you can reach us on X at GBNews. Well, I'm joined now by former Attorney General Dominic Grieve. Coming down the line, Dominic Grieve, do you not think that the Attorney General was speaking completely out of turn in making this implicit comparison between those of us who want to leave the ECHR in order to better control our borders and Carl Schmitt, who, of course, everybody knows was a political philosopher aligned with the German Nazis?
But it's not what he said. Yeah, I agree with you that if he had said he had compared those who want to leave the ECHR with Nazis, that would be very foolish, it would be wrong, and it would be improper. But it's not what he said. The point he made in his speech was that the Nazis claimed the right to ignore international legal obligations when it suited them. And that, of course, is exactly what happened in this country, not with reform, but with the Conservative government, when it announced back in over the Northern Ireland Protocol that it felt it could violate a treaty it had itself signed. That was the point he was making. And I have to say, I mean, I've checked it out. It is quite clear that is what he said. Now, he may have been misinterpreted, and that may also explain why he subsequently said he was sorry he's been misinterpreted. But I have to say, it is not what he said.
If you compare, for example, let's look at countries such as New Zealand, Canada, Australia, none of which, obviously all Anglosphere countries, none of which in the ECHR, none of which would seem like they're a Nazi state in any serious way. Iceland has obviously broken international law over issues such as fishing. There's widespread unhappiness with the ECHR across much of Europe, where states on both the left and the right are now very unhappy with how the ECHR is being used to block the deportation of foreign criminals and illegal migrants from their country. Do you not worry, Dominic Grieve, that the ruling class in this country, the international legal class, does look completely adrift from where public opinion is?
No, I don't worry that we look completely adrift from where public opinion is, because public opinion on this subject tends to focus on one or two specific points. And there are many benefits from having membership of the ECHR. And I also happen to think the ECHR isn't perfect. And interestingly, if you go and look at the speech made by Lord Hermer, there's a big section in it about how the ECHR is not in itself perfect. And there may be areas which could do with reform, or indeed, there may be areas where, in fact, its application in this country, particularly over the issue of deportation of foreign criminals, may be being misinterpreted, which is something which the government could legitimately do something about. It's really important in these debates that one actually looks at, firstly, what people say, rather than just getting carried away, and secondly, that one actually has some sort of understanding of how the rules work around an international convention.
I'm very aware of how the ECHR works. I've studied the ECHR and indeed the case for leaving it in some detail. The reality is, as you know, because of Article 3 and Article 8 in the ECHR, we are not able to control our borders and deport foreign criminals and illegal migrants who make individual appeals to the ECHR, which is entrenched in UK law through the Human Rights Act. If we want to stop the small boats and we want to regain our territorial sovereignty, we need to leave the ECHR.
No, that's rubbish. Because even if you...
Well, that's not rubbish. It's a view, and it's an entirely legitimate view. It's not rubbish at all.
Rubbish. Hey, you going to listen to me or not? It's rubbish.
Well, I'm sorry, Dominic Grieve, you're the person who said my view was rubbish. It was an opinion you happen to disagree with.
Well, yeah, well, it is, but it's also rubbish because it's not just an opinion I disagree with. You've put forward this opinion, but in fact, if we were to leave the ECHR, it would still be an issue over deporting foreign criminals because of the point which I've made on many occasions, is that the biggest difficulty is that even when you are in a position to deport them, you often can't send them back to the countries from which they come. And that is a serious issue. And one which I appreciate is, in comparison, Article 3 and Article 8 cases leading to an inability to return are comparatively few. Although I do also accept that because they acquire quite a lot of prominence, they will lead to undermining of public confidence. So all those are legitimate points. But if we're going to have a debate on this, which you want to have, it's important to actually get some of the basic facts right in the first place. Because undoubtedly,
so if what I'm saying is incorrect, Dominic Grieve, if what I'm saying is incorrect about Article 3 and Article 8, then why is Yvette Cooper and Keir Starmer, both Labour politicians, on the record saying they want to reform Article 3? They want to reform Article 8. If I'm speaking rubbish, as you say, why are frontline Labour politicians saying they want to reform the ECHR?
there are perfectly good grounds for making argument. You could make two good arguments. You could argue that we should leave the Refugee Convention, which in fact has much more bearing on issues about deporting people who've come here seeking asylum and failing to get asylum, or even wishing to get asylum. That might be a better place to start. The European Convention on Human Rights and the Human Rights Act has a pretty peripheral role in all this. It is true that one of the things it's doing is leading people to invoke Article 8 and the right to a private and family life. And I'm the first to accept that that is leading to delays in the system. And also, I think there are some mistaken decisions that have been made at first instance on a number of these cases, which are then only corrected on appeal. So that's a very legitimate area to look at. As for Article 3, which is much more fundamental, because it concerns torture and inhuman and degrading treatment, I have to say to you, I haven't heard Yvette Cooper talk about leaving Article 3, and I think Article 3
I didn't say leaving. I said there was a widespread discussion about reforming the ECHR. For example, the Pakistani drug dealer today who used the ECHR to remain in the UK.
I think it would be quite difficult to do. I think it would be quite difficult.
But the point is, Dominic Grieve, millions of people out there who are watching the show, waking up week after week, reading about these absurd cases of foreign criminals like the Pakistani Class A drug dealer today, who was dealing heroin and cocaine, who used the ECHR to stay in the UK so that he could teach his son about Pakistani culture and Islam. What I'm suggesting to you is that the people who are making the case for the ECHR are completely adrift with where the public mood is in this country.
Well, that's your opinion. And I have my own opinion on that. I'm the first to accept that the ECHR presents challenges. I also have great concerns about losing control of our national borders. And you may be surprised to learn, I'm quite sympathetic, very sympathetic to those who share those concerns. But that, for my mind, is not a good reason in itself for leaving the European Convention on Human Rights. And I think you are looking at the wrong target. And actually, this will prove, even if you were to do it, not to solve most of the problems that are being caused in our country at the moment by illegal migration.
Well, thank you to Dominic Grieve for joining us tonight. I'm now joined by my panel, former Labour MP Lloyd Russell-Moyle and political commentator Esther Craigcue. Lloyd, Dominic Grieve saying there that actually leaving the ECHR won't solve any issues around stopping the small boats, deporting foreign criminals, which raises the question, as I put to him, why are so many Labour politicians, not only Nigel Farage, but why are now Labour politicians and people on the left of politics now saying they're going to have to do something about the ECHR because it's the only way they can get on top of the small boat crisis?
Well, I've not heard politicians saying we need to get rid, Labour politicians saying we've got to get rid of the
saying
ECHR.
It's a problem, though, and we need to reform the ECHR.
We've always needed to constantly reform the ECHR, and reform has always happened at the Council of Europe, which is the body that controls the ECHR. We have optional protocols that we've signed on to, and additional changes and rulings. Most of the time, most of these cases you cite, it is a lower court that has made the wrong decision, and when it gets to the actual European courts, they make the judgments that you and I would probably agree with.
They would allow deportation. Lloyd, that is so the problem is not true. Actually, it is true. Sometimes it's UK tribunals, but often it's the ECHR.
Well, very few of our cases ever go to the ECHR. They're a kind of handful every year now. We used to be one of the biggest, but now they're a handful every year.
Sure, but that's because it's entrenched in UK law.
Because our courts determine, and when our courts go to appeal, very often, when it goes to the highest court, the problem often is that the government doesn't pursue it to appeal enough. The government doesn't stand up and say, actually, this is wrong. And if you look, of course, at the post-Brexit effect, where we then allowed almost 1 million people into this country, it has meant that public trust on the immigration system has been completely lost. But you look at Denmark, a leftist government has managed to reduce immigration and asylum to very small numbers. And they've done that without leaving the ECHR. If you look at Italy, a right-wing government, without leaving the ECHR, has managed to There are some problems on a bit of the Albania deal, but it's not actually on Article 3 and 8 that you're talking about. There are some other problems around.
Sure, but I don't think Italy would ever say they have resolved the immigration crisis.
But the ECHR, when they ruled on it, said in principle there was no problem with what Italy was doing. So actually, the problem that we have is that we aren't setting up a proper processing centre in France or somewhere else in the world. So when people arrive here, you say, "Oh, we've got a lovely bus for you to go back on for the processing centre. It just happens to be in Calais." That's what we need to do. I think that's what left and right actually would be able to unite on. But I'm afraid too many of our governments are too weak to do it.
A lack of political leadership, Esther Craku?
Yes, that's certainly true. I mean, I don't really understand this kind of fervent allegiance to the European Court of Human Rights, and whether it's the right thing to leave or not. Clearly, political will has been lacking on the part of our politicians. The idea that Britain had human rights only because it was granted to us by predominantly German judges in a foreign court is ludicrous, really. But this idea,
not predominantly German judges, one German judge.
Judges. But the point,
there's one judge from each country.
The point here is that we don't really need to be going back and forth on which courts to leave or how to rule or anything like that. There was a deterrent. We actually hired Australian consultants to put in place the deterrent, which was Rwanda. OK, if the argument is that they're engaging in a conflict with the DRC on the eastern border, there is another country. But there hasn't been that will. It hasn't. This idea that what we're really struggling with is to deport failed asylum seekers. If you enter this country illegally, you are committing a crime. Your very existence in this country is fraudulent. That should automatically qualify you to a third country for processing or whatever. But we don't have that in place. And the argument that the ECHR shouldn't be ruling on any of these cases in the UK, I actually think is a sound one. Even if it's fewer than what tribunals, UK tribunals legislate on, it's still not a good enough excuse. We shouldn't have foreign courts basically telling us who can and cannot remain in this country. That, on principle, is ludicrous, even if it's just one case.
Indeed. Well, the debate will continue, and I think instinctively many people out there will be wondering why we're still in the European Convention on Human Rights. A spokesman for the Attorney General, Lord Hermer, told GBNews today he rejects the characterisation of his speech by the Conservatives. He acknowledges, though, that his choice of words was clumsy and regrets having used this reference. Well, there you go. Thank you to former Attorney General Dominic Grieve and to my panel. Coming up next, the Chancellor is set to tear up Treasury spending rules to invest in the Red Wall. Funny that. But is it too late to win back those who have already turned to Nigel Farage and reform? We'll be debating that in a couple of minutes.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
What can you say about it? Has it lasted time? It was Slade in Flame.
Yeah.
Was it about Slade?
No, it was an amalgamation of lots of bands that we knew. The director and the writer, Richard Longcrane and Andrew Birkin, they sent us the script as a script originally, and we said, oh, bands don't behave like this in real life. So we decided to take them to America on tour for a month. So they saw what it was like really behind the scenes of a rock band. And we told them stories of what we knew about other bands, plus ourselves, and they amalgamated that into the film. So every scene in the film is true, not to say...
result?
Fantastic.
Yeah?
Mind you, when it come out in '75, the critics were great to it, but the fans didn't like it. Yeah. It was too heavy duty for the fans because it wasn't a comedy film like they expected from a happy-go-lucky band like we were.
You did that on purpose, though, didn't you?
We did it on purpose.
To make a
we
film
didn't
like
want to make it.
Dave Clark 5 had done Catch Us If You Can, Hard Day's Night.
That was all that. Yeah.
They were all
there were lots out there.
Yeah.
We wanted to go totally the other way because nobody expected us to do that.
Yeah.
Of course, the fans thought, whoa, what's this?
Were you worried, though, at that time? Of
course.
Well, hold on, maybe we've made a mistake here.
Of course. When it come out in America, they had to put subtitles on.
Oh, really?
Because they couldn't understand our accents. But 50 years on now, it's just gained momentum.
Yeah.
It's now become a real classic of the rock movie genre. It's Mark Kermode who gave it the title Citizen Kane of rock movies, which is a great accolade for us. Plus, the movie is great. The movie soundtrack is great as well.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Welcome back to Britain's Newsroom with Andrew and Beth.
Hello everyone, Patrick Christie is here.
I'm Michelle Duke, Britain's News Channel.
Access the stories that matter to you. Take the GB News family with you on any device. And as long as you have an internet connection, tune in to GB News anywhere on the planet or beyond. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's News Channel.
Welcome back to State of the Nation tonight on GB News with me, Matt Goodwin. Now, Chancellor Rachel Reeves is set to tear up Treasury spending rules and announce a multi-billion-pound investment in the Red Wall. All of those Labour-held seats across the North and the Midlands that, according to polling, seem to be turning towards Reform UK. An upcoming government spending review will allow the Chancellor to reprioritise spending to Red Wall seats, with billions of pounds of investments in road, rail and green energy projects expected to be announced. Well, joining me now to discuss this announcement is former Conservative MP for Stoke-on-Trent, a man who knows the Red Wall more than most, Jonathan Gullish. Jonathan, what do you make of the Chancellor's announcement here that suddenly there is cash and it can go to the Red Wall?
Well, I think you and I know, Matt, that this is a last-minute roll of the dice from Rachel Reeves. One, to try and restore some of her own credibility with Red Wall voters, but also, quite frankly, to try and get this Red Wall Labour group of MPs that Joe White, the MP for Bassetlaw, leads in a desperate attempt to make sure that they don't keep saying to Sir Keir Starmer, you might have to show Rachel the door, because, frankly, she's tanking in the favourability polls. And, as you say, by tearing up the fiscal rules for what will be a second time in under a year, is going to further shoot her credibility with the financial services and markets in this great country, which means that, you know, on top of the money they're having to find now for winter fuel, the money we expect them to have to find in order to pay for the two-child cap benefit being lifted, ultimately, this is just, undermining the very speech from Sir Keir Starmer where he tried to claim Nigel Farage was a threat to the financial markets. I think perhaps he needs to have a closer look to his next-door neighbour.
The other thing that I'm just slightly confused about, suddenly we've got this announcement, big spending in Red Wall seats, or at least redirecting spending into those areas. But if you look at the country's finances, it seems pretty certain, to me at least, that we're on course for tax rises later this year. We're going to most likely see the Labour government realise that it can't actually square this circle and taxes will have to go up. So, I mean, knowing the Red Wall as well as you do, are these projects going to pull voters back from reform to the Labour Party?
Well, look, again, Matt, you know this because you've actually bothered to go and spend time with voters in these areas and understand them. Look, the Conservative government in 2019 came up under the whole levelling up agenda and never defined what levelling up really meant, nor set expectations. Then we started giving out pockets of money left, right and centre for projects like rail, like road, like buses, as well as high street regeneration. And what happened with all of them? Well, I can tell you in Stoke-on-Trent, one of them has been delivered, but the Labour-led Stoke-on-Trent City Council is still sitting on £35 million levelling up funding in the bank, whilst also getting £56 million worth of bailouts over the 2 years they've been running the council, which is costing the taxpayer £10,000 a day just in the debt interest alone. They do not have the expertise, they do not have the staff, they do not have the bright ideas without serious private sector investment, which is quite sparing when the Chancellor's racked up £25 billion worth of tax rises on them. And as you say, let's be honest, we're all expecting more to have to come in the autumn. So the idea is for the birds, really. These projects will take decades at best to deliver, which means voters will not see it or feel it, and therefore rightly feel that they're once again big promises made, massively under-delivered, and it's just another attempt to try and patronise them into believing that if we throw some cash in your direction, somehow you'll come vote for us. Voters, I think, have firmly made their mind up both on Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves, and particularly with Sir Keir Starmer. He can do all the attacks he wants on Nigel Farage. Ultimately, I'm telling you this from my own experience, and you've seen the local elections and subsequent by-elections in places like Stoke-on-Trent. They have decided that as long as the words come out of that man's mouth, they won't take it seriously.
Well, I was just going to ask you about that. So we've had the by-election, a local by-election in Stoke, which obviously suggests that the national swings that we're seeing in the polls are playing out on the ground. There seems to be quite a lot of enthusiasm for reform. Just going back to that issue of levelling up the non-London regions, and I think you're right to criticise the Conservative government because that levelling up strategy under Boris Johnson was never really developed as well as it could have been. Do you, though, see reform having a levelling up strategy? Do you see the policies that would be needed to revive the left-behind areas and communities and towns that, a reform-led government would need to enact in order to bring about real change? I mean, do you see any policies that you think would work?
Well, look, obviously closing down migrant hotels will have a huge impact because in places like Stoke, we were the 5th largest voluntary asylum dispersal scheme contributor. In fact, last Home Office data I saw had around 1,200 illegal migrants and asylum seekers in our city. That is social housing being taken up as well as hotels in a city that has 6 million visitors come through the station and had a hotel directly opposite, chock-a-block with people who crossed on small boats. So ultimately, that will have a positive impact and release pressure on services. The interesting debate about raising the personal tax threshold up to 20,000. Look, in a place like Stoke, which on average earns £100 less per week than other places in the United Kingdom, I think also is interesting, albeit I think this is where the reform challenge is from someone like myself. They've got to make the sums add up. I think they've got time. I don't buy into this whole idea that somehow we're 4 years away potentially from a general election. Everyone expects a fully costed manifesto from reform, but not from anyone else. But I think that in a year's time, they're going to have to make sums add up and have, as you say, clear policies specifically for red wall areas about regeneration. And that, for me, in one idea, Matt, is simple. If you're going to have devolution, let's properly devolve powers to mayors or to these large combined authorities around corporation tax, around business rates. Stoke-on-Trent has the leading video games university in the country at Stafford University. Why are we not able to give tax incentives to companies like Microsoft to move their HQs to Stoke and create the high-skilled jobs that we so desperately want?
Great. Thank you, Jonathan Gullis, for joining us tonight. We know you're a friend of the channel. We appreciate it. Lloyd Russell-Moore, is this redirection of funding into red wall seats actually going to make a difference? Because to me, it seems that the Chancellor's panicking a bit like the Prime Minister. It's, here's some cash and hopefully this reform thing will go away.
It feels like it's a bit of a panic, and that's such a shame because actually what I think out there is that people are fed up with neoliberal economics. Neoliberal economics that goes in hand with neo-globalism, kind of this idea that you can just sell your family silver, sell any company that you've got and, kind of open borders, all that stuff. I think people are fed up with it. And so actually moving to a different economic base with different set of tests, changing the way the Bank of England does our debt, changing the way that we do investment in this country, I actually think, again, left and right would unite around that. But has she been convinced on that? I'm not sure. I think it is a bit of a giveaway. It is a giveaway that everyone agrees with because Boris wanted to give money to the North. We now want to give money to the North. Clearly, it's a kind of general consensus. Why don't we just get on and do it?
So, Esther Craker, one of the problems I thought with levelling up is you just create this pot of money at the centre and everybody bids for it. But you don't actually send power down to the local communities and regions, a bit like Jonathan Gullis was saying there. And also just throwing money at these areas, is that going to work given that actually what voters are saying, it's not really about money, it's give us control of our borders?
Yeah, well, there's that. And also, we need people that are actually invested in our local communities to make these decisions. I get really frustrated when I see these sort of gimmicks of levelling up and what Labour's doing now, throwing money at these red wall seats. It shouldn't take the potential of you losing votes to realise what this country desperately needs. East to west travel, for example, is completely shambolic. Everything connects to London. And this is something that should have been dealt with decades ago, but we've had politicians kicking the can down the road, and when they see that their votes are crumbling a little bit, that's when they decided to hand them a pot of cash. And it's just not going to work. And unfortunately, people are so fed up with things coming out of Keir Starmer's mouth that are just not true or not going to materialise. This is really not going to help.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, Lloyd Russell-Moore, what happens if this doesn't work? What happens if this money doesn't change people's minds, if Keir Starmer's apocalyptic predictions doesn't change people's minds? What happens if actually this reform revolution, if you want to call it that, just keeps on getting bigger and bigger and bigger out there? I mean, what happens to the Labour Party?
Well, the whole Labour Party strategy at the moment is you'll have pain in the first few years and then you'll have roses later on, and don't worry about it because it will all be be good by the time we get to the general election. Now, we're a year in, and my view is that was the wrong strategy. We should have built trust in the first year. We should have built people's confidence, and then we could have done some difficult decisions. But that's the strategy they've gone down. And it's a very risky strategy because the longer you leave telling someone that something good is coming along, the bigger the surprise has to be. And what I worry is they could have just said some rather meagre things 6 months ago. Now they're going to have to pull the rabbit out the hat. And if they don't, then I think the polls show that Labour's on for the worst result in 100 years, worse than Jeremy Corbyn, worse than you could even imagine.
Indeed. Well, stay with us, because after the break we will be looking into a new audit that has revealed that the civil service has spent nearly 30 million quid on diversity, equality and inclusion initiatives in 1 year. We're going to be looking at this in detail in just a minute.
Dinner under the stars tonight?
That reminds me of our travel insurance.
You mean all clear skies?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GBNews Travel Destinations Forecast.
Blistering heat in parts of Spain. Temperatures could top out over the next few days in southern Spain over 40 Celsius. That heat building and providing some thundery showers in Iberia and southern France into the weekend. A few showers also likely over the Greek islands and Turkey on Saturday. Plenty of warm, sunny weather for Italy and Croatia. Sunny skies too for Spain and Portugal as the heat builds here. And lots of fine weather across the Canaries, where temperatures will continue to rise into next week. And we could get close to 30 degrees in Rome.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GBNews Travel Destinations Forecast.
Evening. Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. The weekend promises a mixed picture. Plenty of showers across northern and western parts and some gusty winds, but fine weather for much of East Anglia and southeast England. Will be turning fresher for all of us behind this cold front, but it's still way out in the Atlantic at this stage. Ahead of it today, we've seen 1 or 2 heavy showers, particularly over northeast Scotland, but they're now fading away. And for many, it's a fine evening out there, staying dry for many overnight, turning quite misty and murky around the coasts of South Wales and southwest England, with a few showers creeping into West Wales and western Scotland later on. Pretty mild, it's pretty humid, temperatures holding up in the teens for many in towns and cities. On to Saturday, and as I said, a mixed picture. Much of eastern England starting fine and dry, but we will see some showers coming into Scotland. Generally here a dry start to the day, and it will be quite a mild start as well. But the rain is gathering, and that will be pushing its way into the west of Northern Ireland fairly smartly through the morning. We'll see some showery rain also arriving in West Wales, and as I said, quite murky around the coasts of Wales and southwest England. But warm and humid across these eastern parts of England. Hazy sunshine here lasting for most of the day. A few showers moving north across maybe the Lake District into southern Scotland, and then this band of wet weather will move across Northern Ireland around the middle part of the day and turn things quite wet and quite windy in western Scotland. Some heavy downpours, even the odd rumble of thunder, and some showers ahead of it too across parts of eastern Scotland and northeast England. A warm, humid feel for many. We could get temperatures into the mid-20s across eastern areas, but Sunday's much fresher. Cooler, less humid air moving in. Again, much of the south and east dry and bright with sunny spells. Showers further north and west, with lots of showers coming into western Scotland. And look at those temperatures. We could get to 26, 27 tomorrow by Sunday, highs in the low 20s, and for many, mid to high teens.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to State of the Nation tonight on GB News with me, Matt Goodwin. Now, an audit by the Cabinet Office has revealed that Whitehall spent a staggering £30 million on woke jobs, diversity jobs, in 1 year. 380 roles under the banner Equality, Diversity and Inclusion. The total cost is equivalent to 135,000 winter fuel payments, or hiring 1,000 more nurses in the NHS. Well, joining me now in the studio to discuss this is Reform UK councillor Jamie McIver, as well as my panel, former Labour MP Lloyd Russell-Moyle and political commentator Esther Craikut. Now, Jamie, we've just been listening to President Trump and Elon Musk of obviously Doge, the push for government efficiency to make savings from the American state. The federal bureaucracy was a really big thing over there. Are we potentially now beginning to see this UK Doge debate pick up momentum? And if so, where can we make similar savings?
Of course, we're seeing that in the UK, and I think it should be welcomed. And actually, that is because of the Reform Party's local election campaign. I think it really put a spotlight on local councils, the embarrassing spending, whether that's things like £22,000 in Kent for people who've entered the country legally to have driving lessons, or whether you're seeing £500,000 in ergonomic chairs. We're seeing a real lot of wastage. But also, I think what we're seeing, certainly what I've noticed in my time in local government, is duplication, constant duplication. And I think what we're going to see very excitingly with reform councils, the Reform Party promised to Doge those councils. Andrea Jenkins in Lincolnshire has done the same. I think we're going to be very embarrassed at some of the things that come forward, and I think we're going to be really delighted that actually 10 councils in Britain are now reform controlled.
So obviously we've seen a debate about changing the flags, we've seen the debate about reducing waste and inefficiency. I was always struck by that National Audit Office report, I think a few months ago, showing that last year between 50 and 80 billion pounds nationally was lost due to fraud and waste. So who knows what's happening locally, right? Those are the numbers. But what about people who would say, well, if you keep taking the axe to local government, to local councils, at some point you're going to start damaging local public services?
Well, I'm sorry, that's a load of rubbish, isn't it? Because actually what we're going to do is, if we're able to make efficiencies, and I'm talking about stopping duplication and silly things like that, jobs that actually deliver nothing for local people when it comes to frontline services, that actually is going to create a surplus in local government to actually spend on things that matter to people, whether that's weekly bin collections in our unitary authorities, whether that's giving funding to adult social care where it actually makes it to the frontline services and isn't hiring people to make sure we've got diversity, equality and inclusion roles doing things. So I think actually what we're going to see is reform finally give residents value for money. It's not about, the Conservative Party likes to go around saying we're going to lower your council tax, freeze your council tax. What reformers say, we're going to get your council lean.
Absolutely. Well, Lloyd Russell-Moyle, what do you think about this UK Doge thrust as being the next line for reform in the political battlefield?
I mean, I think there is always waste in large organisations, whether they're private or public. I actually don't think many councils do have a huge amount of waste. They have been cut so much to the bone.
Well, we just heard about a lot of duplicate jobs. We've heard about money going to driving lessons for refugees.
Let's go through some of these things. For example, it has been hampered by the Conservatives getting rid of the central purchasing that we used to have in this country. So we used to, for example, with fire services, have a central purchasing process where you bought all your fire equipment across the country and you bought for the fire services. The Conservatives got rid of the College of Fire Chief Officers. And what we now have is West Sussex Fire Brigade have different trucks to East Sussex Fire Brigade, and they're non-compatible. So yes, there are some problems there. Those problems have only really existed in the last 10, 15 years under the Conservatives, when they got rid of all these, what they described as woke quangos, but actually we discovered they did a lot in saving money in duplication. So what we will need is some more centralised, more coordination. We should return back to the system where we have one pay scale across the whole civil service, for example.
Sure.
But these things are left Labour things. These aren't
hang on a second. Policy Exchange is not a left-wing think tank, and they were saying today in their new report you can save £5 billion nationally by streamlining the civil service. So this is not just a left-wing issue. Esther Craikut, 30 million quid on woke jobs. It's a big number.
It's not. It doesn't go as far as you would think. I mean, we spend that on, putting migrants up in hotels over the course of 3 days. So it doesn't actually go as far as people think. And it's annoying of course, to have waste in our public services because we pay for it and all of that. But I think what will really make an impact is talking about just cutting things that the council shouldn't be responsible for. The council has too many responsibilities. There's no reason why council should be paying stipends to refugee and asylum seekers here in the UK. That is insulting a huge amount of council spending is actually on pensions, unfunded public pensions that were promised decades ago that, you know, now councils are drowning in debt because of. So I think they have to tackle these big fishes, because if you're talking about £27 million on DEI, in actually the grand scheme of things, it doesn't really go very far and it's not very impressive. And the NHS, as an example of an organisation, has a huge problem of sort of bloated overspending. And it's one of the most sort of streamlined, massive organisations out there. So again, bringing it back to local issues and what these councils really need.
Jamie McIver, just briefly, what's coming next then in this waste-cutting mission?
Well, I think, first of all, on the point about the numbers, it is a lot of money, because actually, as a councillor, I can give £300 grants out in my community, and that goes such a long way. So when we talk about numbers like we've been discussing there, it's huge. What I think next for reform is going to be an absolute wholesale review into all the spending, doge the hell out of these councils, that's what we want. And actually, if you look at the interest payments alone on a daily basis in somewhere like Kent, £84,000 a day in interest payments. This cannot go on. We have got to get the councils lean.
Well, in response to what is happening in some of these local councils, a government spokesperson said this tonight. This spending took place under the previous government. We are absolutely focused on ensuring every pound spent of taxpayers' money delivers for the public, ending hospital backlogs, putting police back on the beat and securing our borders. Well, thank you to Reform Councillor Jamie McIver for joining us, and of course my wonderful panel. Now, coming up after the break, as half of Class A drug users are being let off by police without any punishment whatsoever, is Britain decriminalising drugs through the back door? That's a question I want to debate in a minute or two. See you shortly.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and he did nothing.
It's controversial. And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born. It's everything you need to kickstart your evening. Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it. That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Westminster, the ultimate clique. And you're fighting like rats in a sack. But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask.
OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician.
Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off limits.
You had the power then.
Yeah, as
and now you've lost it.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless.
But no, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show.
Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Nigel is back.
Good evening.
Unfiltered.
Are these proposals bold enough?
Uncompromising.
Will it bring growth?
Unmissable.
We as a country are brilliant.
Nigel Farage returns this Tuesday from 7 p.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Well, welcome back to State of the Nation tonight on GB News with me, Matt Goodwin, or should I say welcome back to Soft Touch Britain, because according to new data, half of Class A drug users are being let off by police without any punishment, according to brand new Home Office data. 48% of people caught in possession of hard drugs, such as cocaine and heroin, that's nearly half, were let off without any criminal sanction last year. Instead, they were given community resolutions, which do not result in a criminal record. Well, I'm joined to discuss this by my panel, former Labour MP Lloyd Russell-Moyle and political commentator Esther Craikoo. Esther, we have lost the war on drugs, have we not?
Yes, we lost it a long time ago when we decided to pump all this money into a policy that's just not working. We haven't reviewed our drug policy in over 50 years, and yet drugs in this country are more potent, more available and cheaper than ever, which would indicate that there's a serious problem. But unfortunately, we have a situation with, Class A drugs like heroin and cocaine where most possession or use is going, unpunished. And with Class B drugs like weed, for example, which Sadiq Khan wants to decriminalise in London, it goes up to 3/4, so about 78%. Now, I don't believe that reviewing our drug policies necessarily means that we have to decriminalise anything, but we need to look for more effective ways of actually getting people off drugs and also making it unattractive to take it up in the first place. I don't want the streets of London to be filled with a pungent, awful smell of weed, or to encourage antisocial behaviour, which is already up in London and accounts for 20% of all police-recorded incidents in the capital. However, I also don't think that we're spending hundreds of billions of pounds a year on policing something that's just not working is also a good use of public money.
Not to mention the mainstreaming of things that support drug addiction, like shoplifting, which is now at the highest level, according to police data, that we've had since 2003. Lloyd Russell-Moyle, the war on drugs is over. The drug addicts, the drug dealers have won, and taxpayers are paying the price.
Well, no, taxpayers paid the price through the war on drugs because it was a waste of money. And it was always a waste of money designed to distract people. We need to reform our drug laws. I have no particular truck for that stench of weed that you sometimes hear. But
sometimes. I smell drugs, I think, almost every day on the streets of our capital.
Die of ecstasy overdoses. The numbers, more people have problems with caffeine and Red Bull overdoses, which have caused real problems in some of our young people, and that's why there's an age limit on it, for example, now. So actually, if we look at the harm of some of these things, some of them do cause real harm, some of them cause antisocial behaviour. There's almost no recorded crime from people taking cocaine. There is recorded crime from people taking heroin. So also, let's be more honest about certain drugs do cause real antisocial behaviour.
Well, exactly.
Certain drugs don't. We do need that review. But my view is, let's look at what has worked around the world. Drug use is pretty much a trend that happens across Europe. It goes up and down across Europe, whatever the policies are. So the question is, how do you mitigate the harm? How do you stop communities being hurt? If you look at this Portuguese model, for example, it's not a soft touch. If you are caught with it, you have to go to a rehabilitation programme. You're forced to. And if you don't go to a rehabilitation programme, then, of course, you can get a criminal sanction. But it means you aren't shoving your prisons with people who have smoked a bit of too much something. And what you're doing is saying to people, we've got another process. It's a mental health problem. We're going to treat you under the Mental Health Act. We're going to section you effectively until you're cured and better. I think there is a better way of doing this, and it would actually have a better effect for society.
Esther Craikoo, more rehab, less prisons. It seems like we're saying that in every area of British national life now.
I'm certainly open to that. I mean, I think the reason why we were so gung-ho on the war on drugs is because we wanted to align our drug policy with Reagan's administration in the US, and it clearly didn't work. However, I do stand by the whole, I don't want our capital to smell of weed. It's disgusting and it's completely unpalatable.
Well, thank you to my panel for debating that. As always, let me know your views. You can catch us on social media. Up next tonight is Patrick Christis. Patrick, what is coming up apart from that remarkable shower I saw you receiving in a migrant camp somewhere in London, I think, actually?
Yes, thank you very much, Matt. Well, I'm joined this evening by my wonderful live studio audience. Yes! Fantastic. It is a full house here. As you rightly said, Matt, I was doused by a Bulgarian gypsy earlier today. We are going to be showing you exactly what went on there, as the migrant crisis seems to only get worse. Does anybody here want to leave the ECHR? Yeah. Right, you're Nazis. According to our Attorney General, does that guy have to go? Has anyone here smoked cannabis? Much more. OK, whoa, there we go. All right, well, we might have someone who's in favour of legalising it. We're going to be talking about all that, and I've got an exclusive about a man that said big up Keir Starmer as he was released from prison. Surprise, surprise, he's back behind bars. All of that and more, 9 to 11 p.m.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Evening. Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. The weekend promises a mixed picture, plenty of showers across northern and western parts and some gusty winds, but fine weather for much of East Anglia and South East England. Will be turning fresher for all of us behind this cold front, but it's still way out in the Atlantic at this stage. Ahead of it today we've seen 1 or 2 heavy showers, particularly over northeast Scotland, but they're now fading away, and for many it's a fine evening out there, staying dry for many overnight, turning quite misty and murky around the coasts of South Wales and southwest England, with a few showers creeping into West Wales and western Scotland later on. Pretty mild, it's pretty humid, temperatures holding up in the teens for many in towns and cities. On to Saturday, and as I said, a mixed picture. Much of eastern England starting fine and dry, but we will see some showers coming into Scotland. Generally here a dry start to the day, and it will be quite a mild start as well. But the rain is gathering, and that will be pushing its way into the west of Northern Ireland fairly smartly through the morning. We'll see some showery rain also arriving in West Wales, and as I said, quite murky around the coasts of Wales and southwest England. But warm and humid across these eastern parts of England. Hazy sunshine here lasting for most of the day. A few showers moving north across maybe the Lake District into southern Scotland, and then this band of wet weather will move across Northern Ireland around the middle part of the day and turn things quite wet and quite windy in western Scotland. Some heavy downpours, even the odd rumble of thunder, and some showers ahead of it too across parts of eastern Scotland and northeast England. A warm, humid feel for many. We could get temperatures into the mid-20s across eastern areas, but Sunday's much fresher. Cooler, less humid air moving in. Again, much of the south and east dry and bright with sunny spells. Showers further north and west with lots of showers coming into western Scotland. And look at those temperatures. We could get to 26, 27 tomorrow by Sunday, highs in the low 20s, and for many, mid to high teens.
A positive outlook through the night will power through to a bright day ahead. Boxed Home Battery Storage, sponsors of weather on GB News.
It's the final week to see how you could be our biggest winner yet, touring in this stylish Elnag Baron 560 motorhome. This brand new 2025 model comes complete with kitchen and bathroom areas and enough space to comfortably sleep a family of 4. We'll also give you a further £5,000 in tax-free cash to add a few of your favourite things. Don't miss out as lines close on the 6th of June. For another chance to win the lot, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus 1 standard network rate message, or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB13 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 6th of June. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m. weekdays here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there short and it did nothing.
It's controversial. And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born. It's everything you need to kickstart your evening. Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it. That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
Because
the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back,
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
and we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes and Kerr weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
By the time you're watching and listening to this, it'll be 9 p.m. Hello and welcome to a very special Patrick Christie's Tonight. If you want money.
No, you come for it. I push for it. I give it.
I've been speaking to people at one of many migrant camps that are popping up and down the country. This one on one of Britain's most expensive roads, Park Lane. In other news, got an exclusive for you about a prisoner that Sir Keir Starmer let out early. Also,